Ladies and gentlemen, this is Indigenous Insights. Welcome to the show, calling from Tempe, Arizona. Today we're joined by Mr. Keith Secola. Keith, thanks for calling in.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. So I met you at Northern Michigan University in Marquette, Michigan. I think I gave you right back to the motel after you performed at the school's powwow there. I can't even remember what year that was. It's been a few years though anyways, right?
It was really cool. I remember thinking, it's going to be a big space in the gymnasium. They quartered off one of it, and then people filled up, and we had a good sound system. And it was kind of a unique event. I thought everything from promoting it with the Native department. I think Martin Reinhardt was his department there.
Oh yeah.
And their promotion on the promotional end, and then they had the sound that it was a little bit behind the scenes kind of thing, but we made a really cool event for people.
Heck yeah, it was fun. That was really fun. So since then, you've been pretty busy lately. What have you been up to?
I don't know. Everything from this quarantine period, I restarted a different version of my Native Americana audio podcast. It's I call it the Audio Cafe, and I was doing it in a long form. Mitch, it was in a long form, like I would interview people like when I was on site. Perhaps when I was in northern Michigan, I actually did interview people when I was recording the band up there. I would take them aside and interview them with my garage band and some field equipment, a nice recording mic, and just ask them questions and get some good quality field recordings. And that was in a longer format. And then when the quarantine started, the producer I'm working with, KBFT Native radio station in Boys Fork, Minnesota, or Net Lake, and the producer said, let's try to do this with Zoom, because I proposed keeping it in the radio format, and so it kind of morphed into this Zoom project. And what's cool about this, Mitch, is we can download the audio track, so we're actually making content for my longer format of Native Americana. And that's really pretty much what I've been doing a lot of. This morning it was a kind of fun session. They asked me to be a performer at a Native culture camp, but none of the elders or none of the tribes knows how we're going to set it up yet, or what format we're going to use using technology. And it was kind of exciting to be on the ground floor of saying, well, okay, Zoom isn't so great for music. It cancels out the guitar. So maybe the evening sessions will have to do like Facebook Live or some other format. But it's technical things like that. And so I've been doing a lot of keeping productive. With music, either you're doing it or you're talking about it or you're doing it.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. When did you first kind of start thinking about doing this podcast? What inspired that?
I've been doing it for a while. I remember with Floyd Westerman, me and Floyd were great friends, but we were bandmates and we played together. And I backed him up and he'd know some of my songs. And I remember recording him, like after we would do things out in the field, I'd ask him questions, and even Charlie Hill and
oh wow,
elders that would come over my house.
Okay.
I'd ask him to sing a song, and this was spanning 20, 25 years. And I got to work with a few ethnomusicologists. One, Thomas Venom, he did a album with Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead called Warriors, about the honor songs of the military, like the Air Corps song and different songs that the Native drums sing. And so I was working with him a long time in the ethnomusicology field, and so it kind of spurred my interest in collecting our stories and songs.
Okay, so when you collected this stuff originally, was it kind of to keep it for yourself and just kind of keep it safe, or were you always collecting it meaning to bring it out to the public to kind of show people?
Well, I think it's for the universe, for the people, for our children's children. And for that purpose, I kind of feel like you got to share this stuff. You got to give it out what's intended for the stories to last, for the voices to last, for the pitches and the reverberation. So it was always with that intention. And even as I do it today, where will the archives be couched? Some up at Boys Fort, different places, maybe different universities and things like that. I know Bob Dylan couches his down in Oklahoma. Maybe there's archives at the University of Minnesota, something like that.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about your latest push here with, using Zoom and stuff. When did you make that switch to Zoom, and what was that first episode like?
Well, there was a learning curve. I didn't even know, what is a browser? I guess I know what it is now, or what kind of browser do you have? It's on your computer. And
yeah.
Questions like, and so there was a learning curve, a technology learning curve, which I saw this morning, with elders and speaker of the language having to adapt to their computer to be able to teach a language class. I see it firsthand, this crossroads. And so there was that even that anxiety. I don't want to do this, and so I got through it. And so this has been about a few months now, and I credit the producer up there at George Strong for pushing me towards that direction. And we tried a few formats, and even today we were on a different format than Zoom. I've tried Microsoft's format and webcast and Facebook Live. So there's a few different formats out there.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, too, like it just kind of what fits with you the best, I guess, too. So it's been a couple months then since you started putting content out on Zoom. Who are some of the guests that you've had on the show in that time?
It's been really cool. I've met grassroots native artists, people that you don't hear of so much, but they're fantastic. And through my travels at festivals and things, I've been in touch. So I've asked, young performers, native performers to come on, and old native performers to come on. I've had the drummer from the Doors come on. I've had Portugal the Man come on the thing, and we got more interviews lined up. We've done about 50, 60 of them already, and we're going to do maybe double that number. But what enables me by doing them Zoom, literally 60 interviews would take me a few years to do physically. Yeah. And so I managed in a few months to create content. And so it's been you could imagine, Mitch, if you could, today you would call somebody else up and you would be able to record the interview. And so you'd have, instead of just one, you'd have two interviews in one day, and so it's kind of like that.
Some of the older performers, you've been interviewing some of the newer performers. Can you give us a little bit of a lesson right now in 2020? Who's the who's who of Native American music, other than yourself, of course? Who should we be listening to?
I think that you got to, first of all, you got to see what's local, when you ask that question, who, there might be some old cat that you never heard of. And so, maybe that's the person you should be listening to. I think live music is important. And unfortunately, we can't do that now. So there's ways that we kind of find out about these things. I guess if you rephrase that question, who did I interview, I don't even know. I guess I don't want to answer that question because then I give people a playlist,
Yeah, and then that by me leaving people out and stuff like that. I guess what you're saying is get out there and explore, right?
Right. I guess that's a good way.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think a lot of people, I guess what I'm trying to get out there is people don't understand how big the world of Native music is. I don't think people understand how many artists are out there.
Yeah, I think that's let me, maybe if I could rephrase that. So maybe give me I'll rephrase that, okay?
Yeah, we'll just keep the record going. Just let me hear your thoughts. What do you have to say?
Well, like I've been recording a lot of younger artists and a lot of older artists, and we seem to be on the same vein, like what is this genre? What are we talking about? And it's almost about self-discovery. And so when I tell listeners or young people, who should be listening to, I would say listen to the locality. Where are you at? First of all, you should be listening to the birds, maybe. Maybe that's a sound. You should listen to the stream. You should listen to the wind, and then who's in your local area? I mean, like what kind of music is around you? For me, I'm living in Tempe, Arizona. And so one of the cool treats of being an indigenous artist is this world of music is so vast that there's a form of music called chicken scratch music. And it's much like a Mexican polka, only it's really adapted into a native style called huela music, where it's using heavy accordion and maybe sax and maybe some violin on some other things, guitar and bass and drums. And it's a neat adaptation of Western and that the cultures where they overlap.
That is cool. So say somebody wanted to Google that. What would they Google to find that? What did you call it?
Oh, you could call it chicken scratch.
Chicken scratch.
Yeah. And it's like up on the North Country, it's like our polka music. And so part of Native Americana, I have a episode about chicken scratch music. And, it's got the same melodies, bum, 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 and the same, and people love it. And so that's when you say you listen to, who should you listen to? And I say that's one place to start is locality, and then spread out to the world.
Okay. I think I did meet a gentleman who, his name is Bobby Bullet. Do you know Bobby Bullet?
Yeah, I know Bobby Bullet.
Yeah, I think he lives about an hour away from us, so that'd probably be one of the closest I know.
You know what? That's a great place to start, because I wouldn't have mentioned him, and he would have been one of the top ones to say. And Bobby's been around a long time. He's definitely influenced by the pentatonic scale, which I think is part of our whispers of our ancestors. And so he has a lot of things to say. Really?
Can we go into that a little bit? You said the pentatonic scale is a whisper from the ancestors?
Yeah. I think in America, we know a lot about these barrios of music. Mitch, there's barrios of music. Like, we know a lot about the Caribbean barrio, the African barrio. We know a lot about the Celtic barrio, all the fiddle music and all the music from Northern Europe and things like that. And there are influences on America, these barrios of music. And the third barrio that was very influential on the music we hear and play today was a Native American barrio, which we know very little about. I think if you look at history through techniques of obliteration, distortion, over-romantification, all these kind of make things for us hard to hear it. And so the pentatonic scale and the melody was definitely in this continent too. It informed things like the blues and things like that, the yodels and the country choruses. And so when I say the pentatonic scale is a whisper from our ancestors, that's exactly what I mean.
Okay, that's really cool. I've never heard that kind of explanation like that before, but that does make a lot of sense. Just because that scale is so widespread is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and it's much used in our music,
yeah.
and the rhythms and things, and a lot of the native chants are maybe a little more complicated and complex and variations, and then some of the other things that you can hear, the rhythms and things in the old stomps and hollers, you can tell how they influenced. When you I recently interviewed in the Native Americana episode Keith from the Old Crow Medicine Show, and he was talking about when someone sings, "Oh, Shenandoah," he goes, "That's a native melody. That's a native word." How can you not hear these kind of things? And I think they were covered up, obliterated, distorted, romanticized.
Yep. So kind of the same thing that happened, just threw it everywhere. They just kind of blocked it all out. Can we, that makes me interested kind of, when did you get into music? When in your life did it come to you? I mean, how did it happen, this course?
I was always wanting to sing, and I remember a doctor when I was, he was our football physician, and he would tell me, "Keith, when you were a little boy, your mom would take you in for your physical, and you'd sing songs to me." So I was about 4 or 5 years old, and so I always had interest of singing. But I started playing the trombone in grade school, like when you pick up an instrument, and it kind of followed me through high school. And by the time in 9th, 10th grade, the school bought a real nice bass trombone, and they let me use it,
Yeah.
And that kind of that opened up a lot of doors, because the bass trombone was similar to the bass guitar on parts. And so it was quickly after, in high school, after graduation, I always had Rummensale guitars my mother would purchase from Rummensales across the Iron Range, and we'd always have them. They'd start off as maybe a 6-string guitar and end up with 2 strings, but no one would know how to change the strings. So we'd have like 3 or 4 of them around the house. And there was until after high school where I really started playing guitar. And shortly after playing a year or two, you kind of start learning from people. And we started with an Iron Range band called the Schwartz Brothers. And so it was kind of through rock and roll that I came about music.
Okay. And then high school band then was kind of the start when you got instruments in school there.
Yeah, and I think the cultural influences were always there. The musical instrument, you'd hear songs like people singing on a drum, or when you'd go to a powwow or a gathering or a feast or something, or just even out backyard, somebody doing a little song for ricing or jigging on rice. Something like that.
Yeah, I guess that was going to be another question I was going to ask you. What kind of culture did you have growing up?
Some of what I just mentioned, where you would see what the culture was, but you wouldn't, I'm blueberry picking. Oh, that's a traditional thing. You wouldn't really know about that kind of, just because you were so immersed in doing things that were seasonal.
Okay.
Like hunting and things like that. That is very cultural and very traditional. Only maybe we didn't call it that so much, that like we were just immersed in it.
Yeah.
And so you kind of grow up the way most Northlander people do, most with the Anishinaabe people or mixed blood people or people around Native people kind of grow up with the same reality.
Yep, absolutely. So who was kind of the leader of your group? Did you have your your parents, or your grandparents? Who was that person for you at that time, kind of taking you through that stuff?
I think, in the Anishinaabe culture, it's matrilineal, so it's your mother, of course, and I had a good parents, and I know we struggled, but it was always part of, I think getting back to the earth was always a refuge for us and for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's always cool to hear where people are coming from with that. I guess there's another question I had wanted to ask you too about the past, because I started working on this show when I was 15 years old. One of the first songs that I heard that blew my mind, because until that age I'd heard, round dance songs and powwow tunes. But I came to this radio studio and I heard Indian Cars by Keith Secola, and I thought, oh my God, there's a whole world I don't even know about. Can you tell me a little bit about where that song came from? Indian Car?
There's an example of pentatonic scale of a chant, you know, and it came at from a crossroads, you know, like. I'm playing it on my guitar, the melody. I call it Electric 49. And then when you start rock and roll, I've been riding in my Indian car, under the wheel, drumming in my brain. You can do it rock dance style like this too.
That is so cool.
It's at the crossroads of Minnehaha and Hiawatha, which today is where the revolution started in Minneapolis. And it's kind of there, you know, like I'm playing a chant with the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, that I've never really put those two together. As soon as you said you can play it round dance style, I mean that's like a little blues tune there you're playing, but it's round dance style. I can see exactly what you're saying now. That you explained it with the music.
Yeah, and so that's exactly what I wanted to do. I remember one time I was at a powwow when I was a young man at the University of Minnesota. I was at the Franklin Avenue Indian Center, and I went in there and I was playing carrying my guitar, and I was just watching from the outside, you know, like the drums. Of course, I knew a lot of friends and things, and I knew a few of the singers on the drums. And I was just kind of watching and listening and enjoying it. And one of the elders came up to me, and he told me, he says, you treat your guitar like a drum, you know, and it'll take you far. And I remember his advice, you know, like treating it like a drum. I call it the little brother of the drum, playing the guitar, because sometimes you can go where you can't take a drum, you know, and in places where there needs a light to be shone, and so you could take the songs of a drum.
Yeah.
And so the little brother of drum is like that for me.
Man, that is so cool. I mean, I've been listening to your music for so long, but to hear what's behind it and stuff, that's so cool. That's really, really cool. So you're working on the podcast, then what's going on with your music then? Are you working on more music or just concentrating on the podcast, or what's going on with that?
Well, actually I got a flute album. I've been enjoying it, you know. I've been recording at home, and I call it portals, and this concept is based on pitch. You know, I pitched recorded Lake Superior, and I found the pitch it records in, and then I match it with a flute, and then I drop some beats, and I have that breathing behind the music, and I drop some beats on there and maybe put a bass line in that, and it's a pretty cool little project, and some are more deliberate. It's a flute album, and then I got I'm anxious to put it out. I'm trying to edit it down, but here's a little sound of my flute. And so I got different pitches for my flutes and things, and I'm able to pitch them to the sounds of natural sounds like crickets, sounds of streams.
Wow, that's
sounds
cool.
Of, I think that pitches at the portal, and it's at the intersection of interspecies communication between plants and animals, animals and plants, humans and plants and animals, and each other. And so I think pitch is really important.
So that Animal Nation understands that those whispers from the ancestors too, then?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a thing there's a thing called motherese, where babies recognize the sound, the tones of a mother's voice, and people call it baby talking, like, hey, baby, hey, you talk really nice to a baby, but it's pitch.
Yeah, that does make sense.
And it's fatherese, too. I say, like, we can soothe the world. We're learning how to soothe the world with pitch, with sounds.
Man, I like talking with musicians. You guys are fun to talk to. Keith, I wanted to ask you about this too. I mean, it's a little more of a serious question, I guess. I mean, we have the pandemic that's happening right now. We have the riots that are going on and stuff. What do you think about? What's your take on all the madness going on in this world right now?
Well, the first one with the pandemic, I'm sure, it's real, and it goes after people with a lot of historical trauma and preconditioned, and people of the native worlds. So we know it's real from there, and I know, like, people are suffering from quarantine fatigue now. Like, it's ironic. It's peaking in Arizona as we speak, and it's probably more dangerous now than it was a month and a half ago going out in public. And so we've always, me and my wife, been sheltered in place, in out of respect to our communities and things like that. And so that's what's going on that part, like, and this thing that happened to George Floyd, of course, is such a human tragedy, and it touched us at the roots of our being, from someone crying out for the instinctual mother, and I think the Mother Earth is like us, all our children are crying out for her, and so a lot of those kind of emotions are coming out, like. And so as me, as a warrior, as an artist, there are waves of this protest, like waves of writing, appearing on things that, like, important, like your Indigenous Insights and shows like that, where you can reach people through letting people come to the truth through their own ways, a metaphysical understanding, rather than saying, here's the truth, I'm going to pound it on you. This is true, so come to it. And so those are kind of my takes. I think that now that we have a voice with the Black Lives Matters, we want to get on their agenda too, so that they can speak up for the native dishonor and racism. And we want to take this opportunity to forward our agenda as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, you must have had a unique perspective as a native musician traveling around like you have. What's your experience has been like out there, kind of experiencing the human race?
Well, it's I think you get a good, like, you get the cream of the crop because you kind of live a happy life. For me, being a musician is even though we know about the causes and social reform and things, for me it was about being happy and making people happy, being good for your family, being true to yourself, like even reversing genetics, like by walking a lot, you can starve off and lower your A1C and lower your blood pressure, and so by living a healthy lifestyle, you're reversing genetics. And so all these things kind of come when you're living on the road and you're seeing things. So you're kind of around happy things, and you want people that are progressive, and you do run into the negative pitfalls, but that's part of life, and so it's a really blessing. I've heard Native artists that said, "Man, I'm never going to take it for granted again." Playing for people, it is really an honor, but at the same time, I didn't know that. Like I'm kind of laugh having time to work on myself physically, how much I wanted to flatten my own curve, and how much I underestimated the time it would take to flatten my own curve, and I'm working on it.
Okay. So I thank you for the perspective on that. It's just interesting to hear what other people have to say. On my list of things here, I'm not really sure what else I have to cover. Is there anything else that you want to talk about here today?
No, I think other than that, I appreciate these kind of programs and producers like yourself, and that we got to support each other and collaborate on more and more things.
Absolutely. I feel like, just learning so much about the way that you do things here in this conversation, I feel like we've already opened up maybe 3 or 4 other conversations for the future.
Really? I'll start off our next conversation, Mitch, I call it the modern protest. Like when I'm doing the song Fry Bread, it's got a simple thing. All I'm asking for fry bread, fry bread. But then in the middle part, I kind of do the modern protest, and I'll say, a long time ago, fry bread was illegal. You couldn't eat fried bread, or you couldn't speak fried bread, or you can ride a fried bread bicycle. So the good people up in Michigan had these illegal fried bread gatherings, and no one was turned away, and so pretty soon these fried bread gatherings grew and grew. And the state wanted a piece of fried bread, so they placated the federal government into passing them fried bread laws, like the Fried Bread Removal Act, the grease, and the fried bread allotment policy. And they hired military people like Colonel Sanders and Captain Crunch and Major Ripoff, General Electric, to enforce the fried bread laws. But they couldn't keep the people down, because one of the people was a fried bread messiah. 3 sisters, and so I go on, and I call it the modern protest, and let people have fun with a very brutal thing, and I say lead people gently to a brutal truth, and so I guess that's what I want to maybe pick up the next conversation at.
Ladies and gentlemen, Keith Secola. Thanks for being here, Keith.
All right, thank you.